When a gang of rich boys in Arizona proved time and time again to be above the law, committing all sorts of crimes and broadcasting them all over the internet, it was only a matter of time before they would get into something much more shocking. And even then, they may or may not face justice.
Why were they jumping through fire, dude? Why? That seems like something they would have done in my town. There was nothing better to do in the damn town. I guess you'd be jumping over fire. Just why, though? I guess boys will be boys.
The boys in this story sound like straight-up, corny teenage drama villain characters. If you have a hard time stomaching smug rich kids and their enabler parents, then buckle up.
I do, but I'll watch it anyway. Yeah, the Gilbert Goons. Yeah, great name for a gang, huh? Great name for a gang.
Our story starts with a group of miscreants who terrorized the city of Gilbert, Arizona, a city with a population of over 200,000 in the...
I have stood under that water tower so many times. I have smoked a joint under that thing, I think. I don't know. I grew up in this freaking town. I know that area so well. It's not even funny. You look around like the edge of these buildings, I probably walked around the perimeter of every one of those buildings because it's such a small town and there's nothing to do.
The southeast portion of the Phoenix metropolitan area. Gilbert is known as being a pretty
I've been to that park. I've been on several dates to that park.
Middle-class area with a high cost of living, quite a bit higher than the national average, being a...
Oh yeah, just want to mention that as well. It's expensive as fuck.
A pretty middle-class area with a high cost of living, quite a bit higher than the national average in the United States. As you'd assume, such an area attracts a number of wealthier people. While that isn't a problem on its own, it is a problem when spoiled rich kids run amok. Gilbert was home to one of such groups, the Gilbert Goons.
Oh.
The Gilbert Goons were a group of wealthy teenagers known all throughout the town for their shenanigans, their pranks, and their straight-up crimes. Since at least as far back as 2022, local law enforcement had known of the Goons as being a violent group. One of the Goons was the son of a man running for mayor in Gilbert, Shane Krauser. One evening in July, Shane's son, along with other members of the Goons, confronted a man and his girlfriend, trying to get them to fight. The son, with his companion...
I mean, okay, look at these kids, by the way. I can't figure out how old they are. They're trying to intimidate this guy who's clearly a grown man. He's clearly in his 30s or 40s, at least. He's just on a walk with his girlfriend or wife. At these fucking boys that look like they're like 10 years old and they weigh like 70 pounds. They're trying to intimidate him.
Shane's son then dropped to the ground and started doing push-ups in front of them, demonstrating his tremendous strength
intimidating.
in order to startle them.
Oh my god,
I'm scared. A video of this
I'm
incident was later shared around online.
We got an alpha male here. Maybe it's like a safety in numbers because he has all his little monkey boys with him. Maybe they're trying to pull like a Jack Doherty kind of thing.
He defended him by saying that there was no physical confrontation and that the kids were merely being disrespectful. However, many other cases related to the group did The Renner family consisted of Talon Renner, his older brother Kyler, their sister, their father Travis, and Travis's wife, Becky.
I don't know a lot of these people, but I feel like I probably knew their siblings because it's a small town and that's how things are when you live in a small town.
Talon and Kyler were often very rambunctious and seemed to enjoy causing chaos and intimidating others. Previously, their father, Travis, was married to another woman. This woman has since given some insight into the family dynamic. Talon and Kyler were somewhat ringleaders within the Gilbert Goons. This woman described Talon as being both an angry kid and a fighter, saying, "He holds in a lot of aggression, and when he snaps, he snaps." She did say that she felt bad for Talon, on the other hand, feeling that he was often misunderstood. Travis, the father, was a multi-millionaire gym owner and high-level employee of the Relentless Media Agency. He absolutely felt he was above the law and lived quite a chaotic life behind the scenes. He was described as being an alcoholic who was basically always smoking weed. The businessman would get his drugs from his own son, Kyler, who dealt them. Kyler dealt cocaine, marijuana, mushrooms, ecstasy.
Of course he did. Of course he did, because they all do. They all do. Almost every guy I was friends with in high school there sold all the drugs, okay? They sold all this, like, that's just what you do, I guess, when you're, like, some spoiled rich kid. I wasn't in a rich family. My family was middle class, but they weren't millionaires. If his father's a millionaire, why is he buying drugs from his son? Wouldn't you think he would have a better connection than that? Like, does his son have a connection with the mob? Does his son have a connection with the cartel in Mexico or something? Like, where is he getting all these drugs? He's like 16.
Marijuana, mushrooms, ecstasy, Percocets, and Xanax. Basically anything you could think of. Kyler, like Talon and the other goons, was a violent bully as well. In fact, he was charged in connection with 2 separate attacks at a parking garage and a house party that came to be called gang.
I think I've been in that parking garage before.
Charged in connection with 2 separate attacks at a parking garage and a house party that came to be called gang violence in 2022. When this happened, Travis tried to defend him when he was taken into custody, but he himself ended up getting arrested on suspicion of drug possession and paraphernalia charges. As far back as when Talon was 11 years old, he was taking drugs like acid and marijuana provided by his older brother.
Okay, what I want to know is, who's 11 years old taking acid, of all things? Like, I've heard of, like, 11-year-olds getting introduced to marijuana by their parents or something. Like, yeah, great parenting, by the way. But, like, can you imagine what kind of psychological damage you could do to a child by giving a child a psychedelic? Like, I'm not saying that psychedelics are dangerous, but we don't know a lot about how they work. And, like, the few studies we have done on psychedelics, they were done on consenting, full-grown adults. They were not tested on 11-year-olds. Imagine being a little 11-year-old kid and taking acid. Like, yeah, you're not gonna die, but it's like, we don't know. Your brain is still developing. You still have another, 14? You have another, 14 years of brain development to do. Can you imagine what kind of damage that could do to your brain?
He was given a good supply of alcohol as well. For his 14th birthday, his brother got him a bunch of marijuana gummies, something the family doesn't seem to have opposed. Talon had plenty of issues at school, where he played football. On one occasion, in relation to his goon activities, he was on the verge of being expelled. This is where Travis...
I just want to say real quick, I went to the exact same high school as this guy. It was called American Leadership Academy. Except I went there about 10 years earlier than him. If he was going there in 2022, then, I was going there back in 2012 or 2011. I went to a different school later and I dropped out, and then later on I got my GED. But I went to that private school at one point, and I got bullied by kids that looked just like him and were just like him. So I think that some of the people I knew from high school might have actually been his older brothers, his older siblings. I met this friend there that we're not really friends anymore, but we were friends for 12 years. We were some of the outcast kids because we were gamers, and being a gamer in 2012 was still seen as being uncool. It's not like it is today, where it's your parents are oh yeah, you want to be a streamer and you're gonna make a bunch of money, okay, I'll buy you equipment that you need. Some parents are doing that for their kids now. I didn't have that option when it was 2008, 2012. We were some of the few gamers in the whole school. There was other people at school that had played video games, but they weren't gamers per se. We were obsessed with anime and video games and shit. That's all we would ever talk about. Memes and anime and other internet shit. That's all we ever talked about because we lived our lives on the internet and everyone bullied us for it. When I look at him, I kind of look at one of the guys that would have bullied me and my guy friend.
Decided to flex his wallet and make a $10,000 donation to the American Leadership Academy, Talon's high school. He also sponsored various sports programs in order to prevent his son from ever getting into any real trouble or facing any punishment for his actions. It was October of 2023. This was when a rager of a house party was being held on the corner of 194th and Via del Rancho. The party had so many people that at least 30 cars were parked all over the neighborhood as over 250 kids partied all about.
Trying to get a hold of the police, there's a whole bunch of, there must be 30 cars out in front of our house and the neighbors. Bunch of teenage.
Oh my god, I'm sorry. This guy sounds like every neighbor I ever had growing up. And they always say that, like, oh, these kids, I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what they're doing. It's like, what do you mean you don't know what they're doing? They're having a party. Have you never seen a party before? Ah, you're making my headphones fall off. You've got me so upset my headphones are falling off. Call the ambulance.
Kids doing all, I don't know, they're all running around. I don't know
They're all running around.
what they're doing, but
I don't know
This
what
alone,
they're
of course,
doing.
annoyed the neighbors, but this annoyance was taken to new heights when they saw the teenagers' behavior. Residents called 911 to complain as the teens jumped their fences and came into their yards, drove recklessly and hit other cars, and even flashed their weapons to
Oh
any
my
citizens
God.
who complained, often yelling at them in the process.
What the fuck?
We've got kids running with beer bottles. They're hitting each other. We just saw 2 car accidents. I think they're too drunk. They're just driving away after they hit each other.
What the hell?
It was immediately clear to anyone watching that this wasn't going to go well and some level of violence was bound to take place. Over 40 minutes of 911 calls were made to the police and later made available to the public. In the calls, neighbors clearly said, someone's going to get hurt, someone's going to get killed. With one even saying, these kids have weapons on them. The police came out to the scene, but they decided that they weren't going to do anything. Instead, they moved on to answering a call about an even more wild party where some domestic violence had been taking place and left the area. With the police deciding that nothing was amiss, the Gilbert Goons had free rein.
The police decided nothing was amiss after multiple calls saying, we got kids out here throwing a wild party, and we asked them, hey, can you quiet down? It's 2 a.m, we're trying to sleep. Can you guys just be a little bit more quiet? And they're just like, F you. They're flashing weapons. They are flashing weapons and making threats. And they're crashing their cars into one another, and they got guns because the neighbors said, hey, could you try to be a little bit more quiet? And the police really said, there's nothing we could do about it. You're the Gilbert Police Department. There is diddly squat going on in Gilbert. Okay? It is so uncommon. It is so rare. Gilbert has such a low crime rate. It is so uncommon to hear about anyone with a weapon or attacking someone. Even if someone sees a kid with a toy gun and they thought it was real, people have called the police before over kids that had a toy gun, and the police were out there like 2 seconds, friggin' squealing tires down the street and sirens blaring. But then it's the middle of the night and these neighbors are saying there's 300 teenagers out here. And the police really said, we got more important stuff to deal with. What the heck were they doing? Were they picking up donuts from Krispy Kremes?
With the police deciding that nothing was amiss, the Gilbert Goons had free rein to do whatever they wanted. This was when one of the goons, Dominic Turner, who went by the street name D-Money, stole the gold chain of a—
Oh, it's D-Money. Look out for D-Money, the Gilbert Goon, bro.
another kid.
He's coming for
Dominic
you.
Turner, who went by the street name D-Money, stole the gold chain of another kid, ripping it right off of his neck. He, like the others, felt that he was entitled to anything he wanted, knowing that he would never face any real consequences. This was when a friend of the theft victim, named Preston Lord, decided he would confront Dominic and get the chain back. While it was a valiant attempt, Preston was soon jumped by a group of the goons consisting of Dominic, Jacob, William, Taylor, and Treston. Also within the group were Talon Renner himself, along with the very similarly named Talon Vigil. I'll be referring to these two by their full names from now on to avoid any confusion. Talon Vigil punched Preston so hard that he collapsed to the ground. As he lay on the ground, Treston began to stomp on his head repeatedly. As Preston was on the ground dying, the group started to dance around on top of his body. First told 911 dispatchers that the group of teenagers had ski masks on, saying that there were about 15 of them.
Did you see the people that assaulted them? Did you see them well enough to get any description, or did you not see it actually happen?
They all had ski masks on, and it was...
How many was it?
A lot.
Like 4 or 5 or more?
Like 15.
It's highly likely that, during the chaos, the facts were getting mixed up. One video taken did show a figure in an all-white outfit with black shoes, likely Treston, running away from the scene on foot, followed by 6 to 8 other teens. In the footage, they can be heard laughing, yelling, "Yo, what the fuck," and "You hit that dude," as they disappeared into the night. They found the most evidence in the case when they looked into Talon Renner. His repeated bragging, his Snapchats, and his various other social media posts were a goldmine of evidence and admissions.
Of course.
Talon Renner, Talon Vigil, Dominic Turner, Jacob Meisner, William Hines, and Taylor Sherman were arraigned on March 13th in the Maricopa County Superior Court on charges of first-degree murder and kidnapping. William was a no-show to the arraignment. Instead, his lawyer went and signed a not guilty plea on his behalf. Jacob and Dominic were also hit with aggravated robbery charges, likely related to the gold chain. All of the young men pleaded not guilty to all of their charges. Treston Billy was caught and arraigned the next day, where he also pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder, kidnapping, and aggravated robbery. All of the young men are going to be charged as adults, even the ones who are technically under the age of 18. Despite this, Talon Ritter was held in juvenile detention along with Jacob. It seems that the boys are all being held separately as possible so that they can't talk to each other and get their stories straight. Within detention, they're forbidden from even making eye contact with one another. While keeping all 7 completely separated is a challenge, it seems to be working, and it seems to be necessary. While investigating, the police found that the suspects had already discussed with each other about how they could cover their tracks. Even worse, Taylor Sherman had even discussed with an unrelated goon about how they could conspire to get the $10,000 reward offered by the FBI. This other goon had texted Taylor, "Yo, tell me you didn't delete the video of the dead kid. It's $10K if you give to the popo." Taylor responded with, "Huh? That's going to make me a victim, you stupid fuck." It's likely that Taylor meant suspect and not victim. In another conversation, Taylor...
What an uneducated idiot. You could be rich and still be uneducated. Victim? You mean suspect? Oh my god. How can you be so rich and be so dumb and uneducated? A fucking middle schooler knows the difference between... A fucking 11-year-old in middle school knows the difference between what a victim is and what a suspect is. 2 totally different things. If I am in a store and I get robbed by a robber, who's the victim and who's the suspect? I am the victim, the store owner, because I'm being robbed. So I'm the victim. And the suspect is the guy robbing me. What do you mean, the victim? Oh, that's gonna make me the victim. Dude, if he only knew what he was saying. So what he's saying is, that's gonna make me the victim, so if you turn in that video for the $10,000 reward from the FBI, then I'm gonna magically appear in the video and I'm gonna be the one dying. Like, that's basically what he'd be saying. It's suspect, not victim. Totally different things. How do you confuse that? That's like if I confused up with down, or if I confused left with... That's like confusing up with down, or confusing, you know, like a bear for a mouse. Totally different things. Polar opposites.
Taylor had texted another goon saying, "Talon Renner killed someone with his hands." In other texts, Jacob had begged everyone he could to delete the videos of the attack. But it was too late. The goons were used to recording and sharing the videos of their attacks. By now, they had learned that there wouldn't be any consequences even if they did. They didn't really understand the concept of keeping evidence away from the public.
Yeah, I don't know why they always decide to document everything they do. They're like, I can't believe I got caught. Because you uploaded all your shit to Facebook and Instagram. What did you think was gonna happen? The FBI goes on there.
Talon Vigil, age 17, was being held on a $1 million bail. It wasn't long before his bail was posted. Despite him admitting to taking part in the murder.
Is his family that rich that they're just like, oh, what? $1 million? Only $1 million to bail out my son? Say no more. Here's the check.
They said that this includes anyone who tried to cover up the crime being held accountable. They are still hoping for Travis to be charged for covering up the crime. They're hoping to take their initiative national, as they have seen similar cases of injustice gain traction after appealing to a larger scale. I'm hoping that this video might help with that. As of the making of this video, this is where we're at. It seems that a much larger trial is scheduled for November.